Welcome to our summary overview presentation on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Today, in this second presentation, we'll be focusing on the central part of Samadhi Pad, the first iteration of the Patanjali Yoga Darshan.
Before going further, let's review a little. We know that the Yoga Sutras are a foundational source text or scripture based on Samkhya philosophy, and we know that each sutra offers a profound opportunity for insight and practice. The first group of sutras, 1 through 4, are pivotal. Sutra 1 is the auspicious blessing of the present moment, now, and marks the beginning of the valuable study of yoga. It refers to yoga as a discipline and as being merged in conscious awareness. Sutra 2 is often considered the most important sutra, as it implies that yoga is both the state of union with the true self and the process of realizing that self. It reveals that yoga is the control of the thought waves in the mind. Nirodha is often defined as control, and it includes blocking, controlling, restraining, and suspending, a process that we become very familiar with in meditation as we learn to focus the mind. The aspect of mind referred to in this sutra is defined as the field of awareness in which all arisings occur. Yoga sees thoughts as multifaceted, as waves, turnings, revolutions, disturbances, cognition, emotion, and patterns. Sutras 5 through 11 go on to define the categories of thoughts and how they affect us. If, as yogis, we are going to suspend the disturbances of our thought waves, we will benefit from understanding the types of thoughts. But before those sutras, Sri Patanjali, in Sutra 3, explains that when the thoughts, emotions, patterns are fully controlled, the yogi resides in the true self. This is our natural state, our birthright. And this makes so much sense. When the mind is perfectly calm, then the individual is completely in yoga, union, with the all-pervasive, conscious, true self. There's nothing else happening. Sutra 4 teaches that at other times, humans are confused, and we completely identify with the activity in the mind. Sutra 12 teaches that practice and dispassion are the methods for realizing the state of oneness. Practice simply means regular sadhana, and dispassion for that which disturbs the mind is the result of practice. Sutra 17 describes the states of being in which the mind is one-pointed and subtle knowledge is revealed. And Sutra 18 teaches about the state of being that is complete, requiring no further knowledge. Sutra 19 teaches that some are born in higher states of consciousness. The groups of sutras that we will study today are as follows. 20 through 22 give practices, or upaya, and 20 is a Kilakam Sutra, or a keystone. 20 to 29 are devoted to the practice of surrender to God, or Ishvara Pranidhan, and 23 and 28 are keystone. 30 and 31 give obstacles to practice and their symptoms, and 32 through 40 give the means for overcoming obstacles, with 33 as a keystone.
As Patanjali has described the states of samadhi, both samadhi with perfection of knowledge, sampragnata samadhi, and the samadhi beyond perfected knowledge, asampragnata samadhi. Now he takes up who gets samadhi and how. And as was mentioned, some are born with samadhi. Of course, this would indicate attainment in previous lifetimes. Then a broad category of yogis is presented, and that's the yogis practicing methods. And that's covered in Sutta 20. So we'll continue with the chanting of Sutra 20. Shraddha Virya Smriti Samadhi Prajna Purvaka Itaresham.
For others, upaya, pratyaya, yogis. It, samadhi, is preceded by reverential faith, energy, remembrance, meditation, and the awakening of wisdom.
The words of the sutra. Shraddha, Virya, Smriti. Shraddha is reverential faith. Not an arbitrary belief, not in something that's made up, but a faith in truth that then gets revealed and confirmed in the process of samadhi. Reverential faith is the foundation of our practice, because without reverence, we can't find the right attitude to the inner awakening that's necessary. And without help of faith, it's difficult to sustain practice. Virya means energy and enthusiasm. Sustained regular sadhana requires energy and enthusiasm. Often, students would come to Babaji asking him for some relief of the stress and strain of practicing regular sadhana and the kind of effort that it takes. And he would just say things like, just kick yourself. The stress was on regularity, even more than on consistency of duration or content, but not breaking the chain of a regular practice gives an inner momentum to our practice. And whether we see that there's progress or not on a daily basis, Babaji would liken to traveling in an airplane. When you're in the plane, it doesn't look like you're going anywhere, but when you land, you reach a different destination. And so often it appears in the course of our regular practice that no progress is being made. But Babaji and source texts like the Bhagavad Gita give us the idea that no effort is ever lost. So regular practice then creates an impression in the mind, and practice becomes easier by that regularity and by the repetition that is maintained by virya, energy and enthusiasm. Shraddha, reverential faith. Virya, energy. Smriti, memory. So this is memory in the yogic sense of remembering first that we have a higher nature, and also remembering those moments, those instances where we may have experienced a moment of peace, where we may have experienced a moment of transcendence, of pure awareness, of devotion. These memories support our yoga practice. And indeed, a memory of a spiritual event, spiritual experience can be taken as the focus of sadhana. One of the methods that will be given later in overcoming the obstacles. Shraddha Virya Smriti Samadhi Prajna. The awakening of the knowledge of samadhi. It's a subtle thing. And I think as meditators progress in their meditation over a few years, most meditators experience at least the beginning levels of samadhi, in which the mind becomes absorbed in the object. And for a moment, there's a suspension of the idea of I am meditating, and the meditation takes over itself. The mind is peaceful and calm, and the object of the meditation alone is resonating, shining in the mind. This is a great support for our sadhana, and it may be likened to learning to ride a bike. At first, in riding a bike, we're not sure of our balance, and maybe someone is holding on to the back of the seat and balancing the bike for us, and then all of a sudden we're riding down the road and we notice that that person is no longer there, and maybe we get nervous and even crash. But gradually we get to know the feeling of the balance of riding a bike. And so it can be with the states of absorption. We can go into a state of absorption through our inner focused concentration and feel the suspension of the I am meditating and emerging into the meditation itself, where there's a forgetfulness of our self-identity, a moment of peace. And then we might find ourselves thinking about our plans or the future, the past, and we'll fall out of that state of meditation. By practice and by repetition, we can get to understand and sustain that feeling of being in absorption. So the samadhi prajna, the experience of samadhi, the knowledge of samadhi, gives stability in the practice of yoga. The sutra says itaresham, for others. Shraddha Virya Smriti Samadhi Prajna Purvaka itaresham. Itaresham is for others, and that's referring to the yogis of practice, those who weren't born with samadhi, but practice to gain it. So the perfection, purvaka, of those reverential faith, energy, courage, memory, and samadhi wisdom guide the yogi of practice.
This sutra also refers to aim. If the aim is set, have faith for its realization, have enthusiasm for its realization, remember it, and the result will be the absorbed mind.
The sutras go on then, in sutras 21 and 22, to make differentiations in the natures of yogis. Some are mild, and some are intense, and some are of medium in their disposition. And practices are also of mild, medium, and intense categories. And then the urge to gain samadhi, that compulsion to realize the aim of yoga is also found in mild, medium, and intense forms. So from the nature of the yogi, to the type of practice, to the intensity of urge, there becomes 3 times 3 times 3, which is 27 categories of yogis. And this has special reference for those of us who lived with Baba Haridasji, because he was an intense yogi of intense methods with intense urge, and he attained. So we were able to see that, and most of us realized that we were neither intense in our disposition, nor were we able to practice intense practices regularly, nor were we of the kind of urge where attaining knowledge, attaining samadhi, attaining liberation is equal to life and death. So yogis of method are graded according to various levels of intensity. The following sutra is a break from what precedes it and gives a totally different approach and method for attaining higher consciousness, for attaining to liberation, and that is the sutra on surrender to God. So we will go ahead and chant in call and response this Sutra 23 of Samadhipad on Ishvara Pranidhan. Ishvara Pranidhanadva Ishvara Pranidhanadva.
Or, by devotional surrender to God, samadhi can be attained quickly.
Ishvara Pranidhan. Putting ourselves down, prostration, surrender of the ego of individuality into divine presence. The word Ishvara comes from Icha, the will to create, and Vara, one who can create at will. This is God, the Creator. And as we have heard, there is Nirguna Brahm and Saguna Brahm. These words are from Vedanta tradition. But there is God beyond name and form. And then there is God with name and form. So in order for the devotional path to work, we need to project a God with name and form to whom we can surrender. In that process of surrender, then we merge in that infinite God that is beyond name and form. The following sutras describe Ishvara and then describe the practice of surrender.
This sutra, before we go on to the classical descriptions of Ishvara, this sutra, Ishvara Pranidhanadvad, or by self-surrender. So this too is a practice, and it's a practice that's accessible to those of us of emotional nature, and it's accessible to those of us whose mind, and this is most people, whose mind can't conceive of formless, abstract, divine presence, but who have devotion in their heart and want to channel that devotion to an ideal, to service, to giving, to caring. And we know from Babaji telling us that while yoga is not a religion, it is at the heart of each religion. So it's that feeling of the individual's desire to serve and surrender to that which is greater. Ishvara Pranidhanadvad. The description that's given here of Ishvara is in the next several sutras. 24. Unrelated to afflictions of life, actions and their results, or impressions produced by those actions, Ishvara is a special being. 25. In Ishvara there is the seed of limitless omniscience. 26. Not being limited by time, Ishvara is the teacher of the earliest teachers. And then 27, Om is the sound denoting Ishvara. So in the description, Ishvara is untainted by actions, has the capacity or seed of limitlessness, all-knowing, ever-present, and is the teacher of all. Babaji was asked about Ishvara Pranidhan so often and about surrender so often. And one thing he would say is that human beings are naturally oriented towards their self-interest. And some of that's biological, we need to survive. But it's also our orientation of egoic individuality. And through the laying that down, and once he took his hair and flipped it over and bowed his head and gave that illustration, just lay it down. Through that, the self-interest dissolves, if practiced. So then the sutra, Om, is the sound denoting Ishvara, Pranav. And in this implies that it can only be indicated, Ishvara can only be indicated, Pranav, not defined, not held onto, not made solid, indicated. Did you want to say more about that?
Pranav means ever new. So presence is ever new. Divine presence is limitless. And in each moment, it appears new again. And this ever new present reality is evoked through the practice of Om. The intonation of Om, a primordial sound, a bead sound, a sound that conveys the essence through vibration itself. And Om is said to be the source of all the mantras and is used in conjunction with almost every mantra. The nasal resonance of Om indicates the ongoing nature of this immanent reality. The sounds of Om, of the O, is sometimes written as A, U, Ma. A, sound from deep in the throat, indicates the beginning, indicates creation. U, coming from the middle of the mouth, indicates preservation, Lord Vishnu. And the sealing of the lips at the end, Ma, indicate Lord Shiva. the destroyer of ignorance. So those aspects of God involved in creation, preservation, and destruction are evoked in the mantra Om, plus the nasalized sound at the end that continues, awakens the Agnya Chakra, and again extends into infinity, the ever-present now.
Babaji would say that the nasalized sound chanted is intoxicating. So we invite you sometime to practice chanting Om, listening to the chant of Om, and absorbing your mind in Om as it is Pranav, ever new, and indicates Ishvara.
So this is the practice that's given in the next sutra, Tajapastarartha Bhavanam. Taj, that, japas, japa, that repetition of the sound of Om, Artha Bhavanam, with the Bhavanam, the dwelling on its Artha, its essence, its meaning. In chanting Om, internally or externally, in a continuous way, with reflection on its meaning, brings absorption into the divine presence, and that is surrender to God, according to Patanjali Yoga Sutra.
The next sutra gives the result of this japa of Om. And again, Babaji would say, don't be like a parrot, just saying it. Reflect on its meaning. Satchit Anand, truth, consciousness, and bliss. Omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, indicating that which is even beyond form. Sutra 29, from that practice, from Ishvara Pranidhan, from repetition of Om and meditation on its meaning, from that practice, the consciousness turns inward and obstacles are overcome.
So now that Patanjali has completed the section on how samadhi is attained by upaya or practices, by birth or by surrender to God, and has stated that from these practices and from surrender to God in particular, the obstacles are overcome. Now he's going to take us back and introduce us to the obstacles of sadhana. So in this cyclical way of teaching, we have gone again up to the highest point, the surrender to God, and now we're going to go back to the base of the mountain and discuss what's keeping us from these realizations. And the sutra states these factors. Vyadi, dhyana, sansaya, pramadalasya, avirati, pranti darshana, alabdha bhumikatva, anavastitatvani, chitta, vikshepaste, antarayaha. Disease, dullness, doubt, carelessness, laziness, worldliness, delusion, non-achievement of a yogic state, and instability are distractions of the mind, and they are obstacles to yoga. So long discourses are not needed to understand these qualities. We have lifetimes of experience. And we do know that it's hard to practice if we're sick, if we're dull-minded, if we have doubts, is it true, is it not true, am I doing the right thing? If we're careless or lazy, distracted by worldly thoughts, deluded about our own state of achievement, non-achievement. This will never work for me. How will I ever get there? And instability. These are distractions, and they're accompanied by symptoms, which are given in 31. Dukkha dharmana sangame jayatva swasa praswasa vikshepa se sahabhuvaha. Dukkha, pain. Dharmanasya, depression. Nervousness, hard breathing. These are symptoms that accompany the distracted state of mind. So we know if we're breathing hard, if we're nervous, if we're in pain, if we have depression, then the obstacles must also be there, because we can trace from the symptoms back to the obstacles. It's also interesting to note how practices such as pranayama address this instability through the symptoms. For instance, by trying to make, through practice, our breath slow and subtle and steady. So we can, by calming ourselves in various ways, we can work back to the distractions and uproot them. This is the process that we go through in our daily sadhana.
Patanjali, fortunately, goes on to tell us what to do with the obstacles and how to remove them. In 32, for the removal of those distractions and symptoms, practice on one principle is to be done. Again, this is concentration, and we learn more about concentration as we continue the study of Yoga Sutras, but we also know that concentration is very familiar to the human being. We all know how to concentrate. We all know what distraction is. And we can learn to concentrate more deeply through practice. It's not an easy learning, and learning often isn't easy, yet it is such a natural state that we can practice it and develop the depth of our concentration, such that, as Patanjali advises, we can practice on one principle.
The next sutra, 33, is one of the few sutras that give us directions of how we can practice overcoming the obstacles within the context of our daily life and our interaction socially. Most of the practices that are given for overcoming the obstacles are practices that we may do solo in our meditation. But here, prescriptions for approaching and correcting the way the obstacles manifest in our social interactions and our worldly life are given. So we will chant this sutra in call and response, as it's an important sutra within the scope of our review. Maitri karuna mudito pekshanam sukha dukkha punya vishayanam bhavana taschitta prasadanam.
Maitri karuna mudito pekshanam Sukha dukha punya punya vishayanam bhavana taschitta prasadanam.
The mind becomes serene by the cultivation of feelings of love for the happy, compassion for the suffering, delight for the virtuous, and indifference for the non-virtuous. I know when I hear this sutra chanted, it actually sounds sweet to my ears, that Maitri Karuna. And I can see in my own practice the inclination to have different attitudes than the one suggested by Sri Patanjali. And so it becomes a very disciplined practice to do as Babaji suggested, turn the angle of the mind. So what if someone has received some really great news? Might I notice my jealousy and instead become very friendly in my attitude and celebrate their good news with them? If I see someone in pain, can I reach beyond an empathy or a sympathy to really reach into their pain and share it with them from my own heart? When someone is virtuous, again, can I not be jealous, but instead take joy in seeing virtue in front of my very eyes? And can I be neutral when I see negativity? Not become negative myself, not move into inaction or apathy, but keep neutrality of mind such that I can have right action in the face of negativity and not experience any toxicity that sticks on me. So amazingly beautiful, profound instructions for turning the angle of the mind throughout the day, all the time, over and over again. Did you want to say more about that sutra?
Many times in sadhana we'll get a chance to reflect on things that we may have just done. And because our mind is in a calm state, we'll be able to see where our self-interest is working. We'll be able to see where our competitiveness was working. We'll be able to see many things within our own motivations. And in seeing them, a change starts. If we're brave enough to face the truth about ourselves, which is revealed to us in our inner reflections, then we can change our attitude. And by changing our attitude, we're also giving those with whom we interact a chance to change their attitude. We're creating space in our relationships. Instead of reacting in ways that we might have witnessed in our families of origin and repeating those patterns with new people, reaffirming our suspicions about who we are and who they are and how the world works, we can break that cycle and we can create the possibility of living into a loving, more fully aware, more present lifestyle. for ourselves and for those around us. This is, in my mind, the measure of whether sadhana is working. Are we becoming kinder? Hopefully the answer is yes, and there's always more work to do. Patanjali then goes on with other methods of calming the mind, removing the distractions and their symptoms. All of these can be practiced, and if you read in Babaji's commentary, you'll find practices given, and all of these practices are worth doing. Since they're solitary practices, we will just mention them here in reading the translations of these next sutras.
So 34, the mind may also be calmed by expulsion and retention of breath. And we know this to be the practice of pranayama, and pranayama is described in Book 2, and as Dayanand said, Babaji gives in his commentary many examples, and in his primer, appropriate practice of pranayama. 35, or else the mind may be made steady by merging in supersensuous perceptions. This or is using the mind and the senses as the vehicle for concentration.
And I think we've all experienced moments of awe. If we go out on a dark night, clear night, and see the stars of our galaxy, and even the glimmer of galaxies beyond that, and we feel the insignificance of our own presence, and at the same time feel connected with the whole. These kinds of feelings are beyond the normal use of our senses to identify things. So supersensuous perception, in one of its forms, could be the kind of awe we experience through our deep, intuitive identification through nature.
Patanjali goes on, or the mind may be fixed by perception of the luminous state within, which is beyond sorrow. And in other sutras, he discusses how the luminous state within awakens through meditation. 37, or one can control the mind by contemplation on one who is free from attachments. And this is where reading stories of saints and ancient stories of the divine give object of concentration and give a feeling of freedom from attachment. As human beings, we are attached. We're attached to our life. We're attached to our possessions. We're attached to our loved ones. We are constantly attaching. And this sutra is suggesting that just concentrating on someone who is free from attachment has the effect of freeing us from attachment, because we become focused on that feeling of freedom and learn what non-attachment is. 38. Or the mind can be made steady by giving it the knowledge of dream and deep sleep for support. We know the quiescence of sleep. We know that when our body is perfectly still, there's only the mind. The senses are even subdued. And in that state, there may be dreams of spiritual awakening or of someone who's free of attachment or of a profound lesson. And the emptiness of the deepest sleep can also be experienced. And these can be used as objects of concentration for meditation. The last in this list, number 39, is the most heartwarming, or by meditation as desired, which implies just meditate. Whatever works for you, that's your sacred object. Meditation as desired. Simply practice what's easy.
So, the final sutra in this segment of the summary overview, Sutra 40, states, mastery is gained when the mind can be fixed on the smallest atom as well as on the greatest infinity. So again, Patanjali has finished the review of obstacles, their symptoms, and methods of removal of obstacles, and then is stating, by that removal, the mind gains a kind of control where it can be fixed on the smallest, an atom, or the greatest infinity. Control of mind is yoga. So we'll close this session with one of the most universal prayers that we learned from Babaji. And this is a prayer that's used widely throughout the Vedic traditions. And these prayers, if you're inclined, are very nice prayers to memorize. And then they can be practiced even if you're out alone in the woods. Because these prayers are giving offerings and acknowledgement of all of the creation. This Shantipat invokes the stars, Antariksham, invokes the earth, Prithivi, invokes the water, Apaha, invokes the plants, Oshadaya, invokes the forest, Vanaspateya, invokes all the devas, Vishwa Deva Devata, and invokes the Supreme Brahm in invoking peace, and then asking that that peace, that real peace, be ours. So we'll chant it slowly together. Om Dyo Shantirantarikshan Shantihi Prithvi Shantirapah Shantiroshadaya Shantihi Vanaspataya Shantirvisve Devaha Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shanti Redhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.